Hello and welcome to the latest EnvCast episode. EnvCast is a Society for the Environment podcast, bringing you environmental professionals in conversation each month. Each episode is designed to provide insight into the life of registered environmental professionals, featuring experts from across a wide range of sectors and disciplines. We explore what they do, why they do it, how they got to where they are now, and their future ambitions. Each guest has verified their environmental credentials by achieving Chartered Environmentalist, Registered Environmental Practitioner, or Registered Environmental Technician registration. To learn more about the Society for the Environment or our environmental registrations, please visit socenv.org.uk. That's socenv.org.uk. Enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to this month's EnvCast episode. My name is Phil Underwood. I'm the Engagement Manager here at the Society for the Environment. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by a Chartered Environmentalist working within land management, who had gained his Chartered Environmentalist registration via the Institution of Agricultural Engineers, but is also a member of RICS, SciWEM, and the Arboricultural Association, as well as being involved in SciEm too. I'm very pleased to welcome Stewart Priddle. Thank you very much for joining us, Stewart.
Thanks very much.
As always on EnvCast, I'm going to hand over to our guests to give us a flavour of what you currently do in your job and any other commitments that you have. So I'm going to hand straight over to you.
So I think you touched on all the letters I've gained now after my name. I may have to try and shorten those down at some point. The fees are getting silly, so I currently work for Freedom Group, which is part of NG Bailey. I'm the technical director within professional services. So professional services covers some civil and electrical design, as well as land and estate management, surveys and inspections, and environmental land management as well. So I sit below the MD alongside the operations director. And then we oversee those divisions, which all have sort of senior partners sat in them as well. So the role which I joined in 2019, November 2019, which we then rapidly got into a pandemic, and I didn't see the business for sort of 18 months properly. Sort of brought in around sort of strategy and growth for the business. But again, particularly around the environmental land management sector, which I'd come from previously, and within that we sort of look after strategic land, so a lot of the non-operational land for EDF around their nuclear sites, and also the recreational element of Yorkshire Water's holding as well as various project work as well involving land management. And as a professional services business, one of the key aspects for us is route feasibility studies, which brings in the designs element, the way leaves, the environmental land management, the surveys as well. So it's sort of a turnkey, not that I particularly like that word turnkey, but it is a turnkey solution for clients, particularly in the utility sector.
So you've mentioned a couple of the organisations that you work with and some of the areas of work that you get involved in. What within the land management side of somewhere like Yorkshire Water or EDF, what kind of things are you doing there?
It's a multitude of things. So the Yorkshire Water contract does sit around sort of countryside access. So thousands of kilometres of footpath, which have assets from small footbridges and stiles to larger assets as well, which have to be surveyed, recorded, and Andy, who's our project manager there, developed a web mapping system so we can photograph it all and kind of give the client a digital. Well, it's not even digital; it's a photographic video walkthrough of their assets and recording all the conditions. And that one also then involves a lot of visitor areas, so they look after car parks and that sort of thing as well. And then with EDF, we're predominantly looking around its biodiversity. So most of our sites have biodiversity benchmark We manage the estate according to certain KPIs, but then we do have other areas like Sizewell, which obviously is gradually changing in terms of the estate down there with the new power station coming online. So we've been managing that estate for a number of years now, for both EDF, which is nuclear generation, but also nuclear new build. And so there's lots of aspects of management down there, particularly around the marshes. So yeah, it can be quite varied. And then we'll go into other areas with sort of invasive species management and that sort of thing as well, particularly for some of the utility providers.
So when we're talking about looking after footpaths and land management and all of that, what that encompasses, I assume there's a huge amount of considerations there. It's not just a case of making it look pretty and tidy, I assume.
No, absolutely. I think all of our working areas are in or border to designated sites, so predominantly SSIs. So there's a lot of stakeholder engagement, as well as external and internal as well. Obviously, these large businesses have multifaceted stakeholders internal. It's not a straightforward job sometimes.
Well, that must keep you on your toes a bit.
It keeps my team on its toes, to be quite honest. It's a good team, and the guys and girls that sort of contract manage these as well. They're sort of at the sharp end of it, really. So that's why I sit at the technical bit and offered my advice where I can, if it's asked for. Sometimes if it's not, but
the joys of management sometimes.
Yeah.
So do you get your hands dirty on site still much?
Only if I trip over, I think now. No, I don't. More's a pity. I did come from the tools, but I do have a small holding here back in Devon, so I have plenty of time at the weekend to get my hands dirty, and I've still got some hedge laying to finish by the end of December for my stewardship grant. So so I still can keep my hand in, but yeah, not within my data.
So on your small holding, are you doing the hedgerows yourself?
I am, yeah. Like I said, I came from on the tools. I used to have a consultants and contracting, which I sold back in 2017. So yeah, have all my chainsaw tickets and climbing tickets and excavator tickets. So yeah, done a fair bit of hedgerow management in my time. So hedge laying as well, but
quite a skill.
And it gets harder as you do it less and less, particularly in December and January when it's very cold.
Yeah. It's nothing to do with age. It just gets harder.
It's nothing to do with age. I've had this argument with my children. It's nothing to do with age.
So did you used to get your hands dirty when before?
Yeah, absolutely. I started off like that. Yeah, absolutely. We had a motorway contract and a local council contract. So yeah, we'd often be seen on the side of the motorway, felling trees or clearing vegetation, putting in reptile fencing, all that type of thing. And in fact, up until the point I actually sold my business, I did have the luxury of often popping to site and seeing a machine driver on their break and having a play for a couple of hours with a set of tree shears or a mulcher. So
why not?
Good. Yeah.
So the combination now of your day job and the fact that you've got a small holding, does a small holding kind of not replace in a way, but it gets you working with your hands still that you used to like doing? Or
yeah, absolutely. I think it fills that little gap.
Yeah.
I think often, and I think many people say, as you kind of move up the ladder, whether it be corporate or just within your own business, you move away from kind of what you were there to do originally. But that is often the nature of business. That whatever it might be, but you end up ordering the stationery and making the tea and being there late at night, making sure everybody's at work the next day, rather than actually doing some work yourself. But yeah, that's what happens. So it's nice to be able to flick back to the other side and join in most of the time. And anyway, so most of the time.
Are you able to implement some environmental concepts in your small holding as well as you?
Yeah, so we did. So I've always been quite fan of agroforestry. So we took one of our fields, and I've done a small agroforestry scheme there. I had to have a big think about sort of what trees to go in, whether it should be fruit or nuts, but I decided on cider apples in the end as a long-term project for when I retired, that I can then get a reasonable return somewhere for all my hard work. So we've done that, and we're in a countryside stewardship scheme as well, and hence why we're trying to finish off some of the hedge laying now. And we've got a small bit of wetland as well, which seems to be constantly pulled balsam at the moment, so every year. But so we do our bit, we try our best, and we'll see what happens now with the changes in stewardship elms. In fact, to be quite honest, I read the Farmers Weekly every week, and I'm still not quite sure where we are and what the government have actually said or not. And it turns out that when somebody was interviewed, it was only somebody's hearsay on a U-turn, or was it? And yeah, I'm not. If anyone really knows, can they kind of drop me an email? That'd be great.
Well, there you go. There's a call to action. I won't try to answer any of that. But so back to your day job. What's your favourite part?
Back to meeting people again. Like I said, I'm off up to Leeds later today, and I'll be meeting with Yorkshire Water tomorrow. And so it's nice to be able to get back to do some face-to-face meetings. And I think, as always has been, is providing a solution to the client. I think we're not a full consultancy where I am. It is about practical delivery, and I think that's the key to me, is actually being able to give the client a solution and then implement it and see the final results, which can be sometimes quite quick, or it can take a number of years for those results to come through. But I think that's the key element of the delivery, definitely.
And what kind of skills and areas of knowledge do you use yourself to support your clients?
Very broad ranging, and I think within land management, countryside management, it's always been that way. We have kind of the soft aspects, so felling trees, cutting grass, vegetation management, that type of thing. But often, we're then into maybe putting in access tracks or small head walls to outfalls, or all that type of thing. So there's quite a broad knowledge that you can build up over years of working in the industry, and I think that's what often is an appeal to the client, when you've got that broader knowledge. That again, the other one that I don't like, one-stop shop, but there you go. You can but I think countryside management is of that ilk. There is a lot of different elements that you need to deliver.
Well, I imagine there's huge amounts to consider, because anything can be on land for a start.
Absolutely,
so
yes.
You must come across all sorts of different challenges and opportunities that come your way. I imagine when you're investigating parts of land, you find things that you weren't expecting, and you have to overcome those kind of things.
I think that's where people can sometimes maybe fall foul of it, because actually it's akin to construction. So if you're doing anything of breaking ground, you've got everything to consider, even though you might be in the middle of a field. Utilities and that sort of thing is part of the course, But then on certain estates, there's things like unexploded ordnance that you have to consider as well. So it's wide ranging, and I've been involved with some of the early bits at Sizewell, but also on HS2. So again, it can be quite challenging what you do have to consider where you are. Even to the point, I think we felled a tree once on a National Trust estate, and the lads doing it, they put a felling cut into it, and they were trying to, it just wouldn't go over, and they ended up winching the tree over. What they found was there was an old shotgun, an old 410, was left up against a tree probably 100 years ago, and the tree had grown around it. So there's basically a piece of metal within the tree, and that's why it wouldn't go over.
Wow.
And I think these states still have it or whatever. But that was a funny find. So, but yeah.
I was going to say, you hear about trees growing around the initial tree stake, whatever you call it.
Absolutely. So it'd been absolutely no different at all. Yeah, no different at all.
Just in this case, it was a shotgun.
But yeah, a small one. But
a small, okay. Yeah, still. I mean, you don't tend to think about that's going to be there, do you? Interesting. So, obviously, the broad range of skills, broad range of knowledge is useful to the clients. How did you? Well, you've mentioned your industry experience and that kind of thing. Is there a particular education route that you went down that moved you towards this area?
No, if I'm honest, I started off many years ago in groundworks and civil engineering, and I kind of fell out of love with that business, and then I ended up, through that sort of route, ended up doing more environmentally based works out on the Somerset levels and places like that. And my wife's an ecologist, and it kind of, things just started to piece together. And that's how I ended up going down this route. And latterly, I then did my master's in environmental management at Birkbeck, protected area management, countryside management. But I say that I did that latterly from having the business. So, and I think, to me, that was just for me to give myself some backing. I'd spent so long sort of coming through an area, and I thought that it's something I wanted to do. So, but by no means is it essential.
No, there's obviously all sorts of different routes into every profession, really.
Absolutely. I think in most of my life, I've sort of come from that the bottom up route, really, and sort of, like I say, mostly starting on the tools. So certainly, like I say, it's on that sort of side of the route to market.
Yeah, it's good to hear. I mean, it's the Society for the Environment. We're looking into a lot of the skills gaps and that kind of thing over the next few years. So
you've got the new designation, haven't you? Which I think is great. Just below chartered, but I think it's a really good stepping stone for people. I think it'll be well used.
Yes, people are starting to use it, which is good. So that's the registered environmental practitioner. So if you want to be on the pathway to chartered environmentalist registration and you're not quite there yet, so you're a couple of years away maybe, then the environmental practitioner registration is a good way to go. It certainly shows your willingness to step up to that chartered environmentalist registration, but obviously it's an excellent registration on its own. You don't have to be aiming for chartership. So, do you feel like you're making a difference in your role in terms of the environment?
I think so. In a small way. Obviously, we have to manage these estates on behalf of the client, but we do hope that they take our advice and recommendations, which they often do. So I think you do have the opportunity to make a difference there. But I think it's in the wider context as well of doing things like this and bringing awareness to people. And I think then there's other opportunities to promote sort of environmental good practice as well. And say even back home here, trying to sort of do my bit and maybe share my advice with some neighbouring farmers, not all of whom necessarily want to listen to me.
As is always the case, I imagine, with lots of people.
Yeah, absolutely. My children, definitely.
Yeah. From that response, I think you're very similar to a lot of people. You're obviously trying to make a difference yourself, but you have the awareness that you're in terms of the 8 billion people that are on this planet, the difference you can make can sometimes feel quite small, I suppose. Do you think that in terms of environmental professionals, do you think that's a bit of a, I don't know what the word is, a bit of a thing that, you know, there's this pressure to make as much difference as you can, but you're very aware you're a small person in a big world. But
so I will say when I worked in construction, that the end goal was always the same. The program, you know, the budget, and concrete was concrete and tarmac was tarmac. So everybody was kind of on the same page. Whereas I found within sort of the conservation environmental sector, there can be vastly different views on the same subject. Now that could be two ecologists or whatever looking at the same thing. Their opinions on how things should be managed or progressed or maintained is different because they have different views on maybe an individual species, a habitat, or whatever it might be. I think that was always the thing that stood out to me about this industry of kind of sometimes the infighting that's there, which you know, I've always, when I did my masters, so Professor John Lawton had released his white paper, which the conclusion was, you know, more, better, bigger, joined up, and I've always taken that with me, and I was lucky enough to meet the guy, very down to earth chap, and I still think it stands true now, and I think that was in 2010, you know. 10, 12 years later, you know, we've had several rehashes of really the same principles of more, better, bigger, joined up, and we're still talking about it. And I think that's the problem. Because we kind of can't get to that same conclusion, we keep talking about it, and that's fine. But if you've got vision, you've got to have action. Because the two are separate, they don't work. So I think it's if we can get to that point, we can certainly make a bigger difference. But you know, we do need to get there. I think currently as well, when we've got things around the, you know, the greenwashing, biodiversity net gain, natural capital, nature-based solutions. I don't know. I can't think of quite all the buzzwords right now. What do they mean, and what do they mean to who? Because there's so many different sectors in it now. It's not just environmentalists. There's financiers, banks, pension funds. You know, right down through the NGOs, sort of back in and land agents as well. You know, everybody's involved. It means different things to everybody. And again, it's not joined up. Yeah,
having all those people involved is a good thing, I think. And if they can come together as a collective and make big changes, then that's what we want to see, really, isn't it? I think that's what you get now. Having all of those different sectors involved they should be involved. But yeah, it's a case of how do they all work together and sing on the same hymn sheet. In fact, that's something that, so I went last night, I was at the Institution of Environmental Sciences Burntwood lecture, which was recorded. So if anybody wants to go and watch that, I think it'll be on their YouTube channel. And that was a lecture from Caroline Lucas. And one of the things she said was, in terms of environmental science and the complexities around that, when you're putting things through government and you're getting advice from various people to make it happen, when it comes to environmental matters, the messages she gets are quite disjointed. Whereas in other areas, like I don't know, things like maybe it's construction or civil engineering, that kind of thing, big major works, it's slightly more streamlined, I suppose. It's obviously very, very complex, but it was very much noted that the environmental side of things was quite different opinions from different areas, which is tricky to contend and put through. So she put out a call to action to try and consolidate that in some way.
I think we only have to look at some of the policies that have come out recently around, you know, whether it be sort of the sort of ELMS, the transition from countryside stewardship, or, you know, the biodiversity net gain with the Environment Bill. Lots of announcements were made, but when people started asking questions, the government didn't have the answers because they actually hadn't thought it through as a life cycle. We had the same with the nutrient neutrality, obviously, particularly in Somerset here with the Ramsars on the levels. The point was made, house building was stopped. Lots of people put forward lots of different calculators and calculations, but with no real response from the LPAs or Natural England. If we're going to do stuff, again, this is about the vision and action. They've got to come together. Otherwise, we just end up at a stalling point again.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to blow the Society for the Environment's trumpet slightly, because we're the Secretariat for the Environmental Policy Forum, which brings together, I'm not sure how many, is it 16, 17, 18 professional bodies as a collective policy voice to talk about those kind of things. So hopefully it's a step in the right direction in that sense, to try and unify voice to make decisions happen more efficiently and to please more people, hopefully. So let's go back a few years. When did you first develop an awareness for environmental matters?
Very early on, I think. Even back in sort of civil engineering days, I was involved in tunnelling as well. So we had a very good environmental advisor with the firm that I was working with. But that was probably around a slightly different area then, so around waste, pollution, that type of thing. But those certain things, they still ring true now when you come through into this side. So and growing up, where I did or have, I think I've been around the environment and nature from day dot. So I did have that luck of the draw when I was brought into this world.
Have you always been in Devon?
Yes, of sorts. I was born in Wiltshire in a place called Odstock, which I know many of my friends find hugely amusing. Which is in Wiltshire. I was shipped back across the border then into Somerset, where my parents were living, but very quickly I was in Devon. I think by the time I was 3 or 4. So always been in Devon since then. But then worked around all around the country and across in Ireland with my work. So been lucky enough to see the UK doing it like that.
Yeah, but a good connection with the environment around you. Mm-hmm. Nice. So that environmental awareness, you gained your Chartered Environmentalist registration in 2018, I believe. Mm-hmm. So that's fairly recently. So what does being a Chartered Environmentalist mean to you?
Again, for myself, it's I've backed myself all the way through. I did my masters, and then I went to Chartered Environmentalist. And I think for me, particularly, as I said, I've come from the tools up. So it was kind of that last tick in the box to say, yeah, I've been recognised that I'm kind of a professional within my industry, which I didn't have lots of sort of A-levels or degrees to sort of sit back on to do that. And again, I'd come from maybe that more practical delivery side. So like I said, on the tools, on chainsaws or tractors, to then to that more technical side. So, offering advice or writing some of the reports or recommendations. So again, I think for me, it was just that final bit to say, we believe that you're sort of top of your game.
So was that a bit of an internal goal for you, or is it somebody encouraging?
No, certainly internal goal for me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And since you've had it, has it become, has it become more of a known thing outside of yourself, as in have other people taken note of it as something that you've achieved? And
well, I asked my boss. I think it was noted within my. So I sold a business that had been mine for 15 years, and so then I go into that big wide world of being employed somewhere.
Yeah.
And so I think potentially having that with the experience maybe gave me the edge in terms of interview and what have you. So it put the two together.
So did you get employed for this job since 2018.
Yes.
I see. Okay, good. So you're a member of numerous professional bodies, as we mentioned, SocEnv and Arboriculture Association and so on. Why is that valuable to you, and why might it be valuable to your employer as well?
So I think they all have their own merit of why I actually joined them, and I think, as I said, countryside management covering such a broad base. And like I say, each have their own merit. So our Arboricultural Association, I think, as I said, I started off as a tech member and now professional member. But the involvement, I said I was a climbing tree surgeon for a number of years, and it was the feedback. Join I think any of these industry bodies, professional bodies that you join, you need to use them, if that makes sense. If you just pay your fees and ignore it, it is kind of pointless. But I've done a number of training courses with the Arb Association, and taken some online CPD and so on and so forth. And the same with SocEnv as well. Some invaluable information comes through from them, particularly from my sort of area of wetlands and waterways. And then there's the Institute of Agricultural Engineers, where I took my Chartered Environmentalist, and again, where the principles and the machinery that kind of Institute of Agricultural Engineers represents, and in fact they represent many more things as well, even in terms of forestry engineering and that sort of thing, and horticulture engineering. So it's not just, I think it's land-based industries rather than agriculture, I should probably say. But that's, again, countryside management, land management, it's a land-based industry. So all of that machinery, all of those principles, all of modern technology of finding smarter, more efficient ways of working, that's what it's about, and that's why I was a member, and why I chose to do my sort of chartered environmentalist through them. Like I say, I was questioned though at the beginning of why I picked them, but it is all very relevant, and I think that's the thing, because there's agriculture within the title. People sometimes might be slightly swayed in what their involvement is, but it's certainly around process and mechanisation.
Well, from what you said, it makes a huge amount of sense that you're a member of a number of bodies because of the varied work that you do. You work with trees, you work alongside rivers, you work on agricultural land, and land beyond that. So is there one body that covers all of that? Possibly not, I don't know. But having those different specialisms to draw upon, to learn from, I imagine would be quite useful. Yeah, absolutely.
But I say you do need to engage with those bodies to get the best out of it.
Yeah. So this is a broad question, but we'll go for it. What would you say to others thinking about a career in the environment? In terms of a career in the environment, that's quite broad.
I'd say in terms of the environment, that's massive. And I think that's probably there's a starter for 10, isn't it? You have a lot of options if the environment is kind of your bag, as it were. There are so many ways into that industry, and at so many levels that the world's your oyster, really. So nowadays, with the powers of the internet and that, do your research, see what's available, because there's probably some jobs out there that you never realised were even a job. I think very broad. So I think there's probably something for everybody there.
Huge amounts of opportunities, and hopefully increasing as well. So
I would say so, definitely.
Yeah. So that's for other people to think about. But what's next for you? How broad is that question?
Well, yeah, that's fairly broad as well.
Apart from 7 puppies.
7 puppies. Yeah, we've just had a litter of puppies as well, which is giving my wife some sleepless nights at the moment. It's like having 7 babies, but there we go. I think it's just, I think you mentioned as well, I've just did my senior professional assessment for Institute of Chartered Surveyors as well. So I went down the environmental surveyor route there. So I'm a chartered environmental surveyor as well. And I think, but I don't think I ever want to stop learning. I love learning. I love sort of setting a bit of a challenge to find out new information or whatever it might be. So I think if we stop learning, we probably get a little bit bored. So I'll continue to learn at short courses. I don't think I'm going to chuck myself back in for another master's or anything like that. But I encourage everybody to do it, no matter what it is. I know sometimes life and work can get in the way, but I think it's one of the key points of your life that if you keep learning, if you keep educating yourself, and it doesn't have to necessarily be, technical in terms of, I don't have to necessarily do something within the environment. I could do something in, whatever it might be, as long as you're learning and developing. I think that's always the thing. Yeah. And then work will progress. We have different projects in the pipeline. Lots to look at, goals to achieve. So that will continue on. Fairly standard.
Anything particularly exciting coming up in terms of projects that you're able to share that you're looking forward to getting involved in?
Probably can't talk about some of the nationally significant infrastructure projects, but I'm sure people are aware of various schemes around the country. I think there's several of those coming online, and then varying project work that will come through for next year that we'll be involved in. So it'd be interesting to pick those up.
Nice. So my final question, which is what we ask everybody who joins our EnvCast episodes, if you were able to influence world leaders for a day, what would be the thing that you would focus on?
I think I mentioned it before about action and vision, and I think I'll be quite honest. I did have a think about this and a little look, and it was actually a quote from Nelson Mandela. Back in the 90s, which was action without vision is only passing time. Vision without action is merely daydreaming, but vision with action can change the world. And I think it's quite a poignant quote and can apply both to the environment. I think, with COP15 a couple of days away, COP27 as well. So, and I think that's been, the driver there is that it's action and vision, but I think we can probably apply that. Goodness me, let's look at our political history over the last 24 months, and I think, much as I said before, with some of the policies that have come out, it's not there's vision but not necessarily action, because it's not been thought about properly. So that would probably be my rather than anything else, I'll probably reiterate Nelson Mandela's quote to them, and I think it's a takeaway that they could certainly champion.
So that draws us to a close. So thank you very, very much for joining us today, Stuart. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And if you want to follow in the footsteps of Stuart by becoming a chartered environmentalist and to showcase your environmental knowledge within the agricultural or land management world, please check out the Institution of Agricultural Engineers website, which is iagre.org. So that's iagre.org. Next month, we hope to hear the insights from a chartered environmentalist working for the World Food Programme. So I'll see you then. Thank you for listening to today's EnvCast episode. If you'd like to hear more about the Chartered Environmentalist, Registered Environmental Practitioner, or Registered Environmental Technician registrations, please look at our resources available at socenv.org.uk. Alternatively, visit our YouTube channel, where you can find a variety of environmental webinar series, registration guides, and various insights from registrants themselves. just search for Society for the Environment on YouTube. To keep up to date with what's going on at the Society for the Environment, you can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram via @SocEnv_HQ and via LinkedIn by searching for Society for the Environment with SocEnv in the brackets. We will release a new EnvCast episode on the first Wednesday of each month, so if you're interested in future podcasts, please do subscribe. You can subscribe and review through a variety of platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Castbox.